Hello, welcome everyone. This is Trudy DeWitt with Calix. I'll give everybody just a minute and we'll get started. Hi everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our webinar, Crush BEAD Program Complexity with Confidence. Before our presenters begin, I want to share a few quick tips so that you can get the most out of your webinar experience. Located on the top toolbar on the right side, you'll see your settings and control panel. And here you'll find your questions section. In the questions section, indicated by the box with the question mark in the toolbar, we encourage you to submit any questions or comments you have during the presentation by typing them there. We'll address those during the Q&A session at the end, and if we don't get to yours, we'll send you a written response in the email. Finally, there'll be several live poll questions for you to take part in throughout the webinar, and we'd like to thank you in advance for your participation in those. And just so you know, this webinar is being recorded, and we'll post a link in the coming days on the Calix Webinar Hub. And be on the lookout in your own email, where we'll be sending you a thank you for registering and a link for your convenience. With that, it's time for me to turn it over to our speakers, led by Tom Shore, Area Vice President, Broadband Platforms Marketing at Calix. The mic is all yours, Tom.
Great, thanks so much, Trudy. So the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program really represents a great opportunity to expand high-speed broadband services to unserved and underserved communities. But it's also bringing all these complexities that are really unique and challenging, and that's what we're going to dissect and discuss today. So why don't we go ahead and get to that here. Again, as Trudy pointed out, my name is Tom Shore, and I'm responsible for broadband platform marketing at Calix. And really fortunate to have with me today Kristy Szabo. She's the Director of Consulting at Vantage Point. We've also got Greg Bathrick. He's the AVP of Commercial Development here at Calix. And then Andre Vieira, who is Director of Access Network Product Marketing here at Calix. And we're going to be discussing how to navigate this maze of requirements associated with BEAD that really span the application stage, the planning, the deployment, and also operating the network. And we'll start out with the BEAD update and some of the considerations that are part of the journey from funding to operationalization and validation of the network. And then we'll also discuss some planning and building a BEAD compliant solution, as well as other considerations that you may want to look at from an operations and service delivery perspective. And then finally, we're going to talk about some of the ways Vantage Point and Calix can help you build a better BEAD community. It's really transformative to all the families and the businesses that you're going to be serving. We're then going to wrap up with a quick summary and next steps. And if we have time, we'll open it up for questions. So again, as Trudy pointed out, please feel free to post your questions through the Q&A dialog box, and we'll try to leave some time here at the end. So just let me start off with the view into the journey that BSPs take as they navigate BEAD. So many of you have been down this path before in building out and also operating a network. And you have these key steps that consist of funding your new network or new network expansion, for all that matters, followed by a design and also deployment of the end-to-end systems. There's also this key stage of turning up traffic and managing and operating the delivery of all the services and experiences that you're going to bring to your subscribers. And then also a key stage with this operationalization is marketing and promoting your network. And this is a cycle that goes continuously. So BEAD, like some of the other funding programs, it touches almost every aspect of this life cycle, but to a certain extent, it's unique from some of the other programs. And we'll spend some time talking about these nuances with BEAD and the considerations that you're going to need to take into account as you go through the funding application stage, the high-level design and business case that really map out what it's going to take to deliver a sustainable and exceptional experience to all these targeted communities that you've got there. And then we're going to switch to a discussion of the build out and the operationalization phases, where you're going to need to be thinking about the detailed design, the end-to-end support and management requirements and meeting the building milestones and reporting on those. And also the testing validation. These are all part of the overall program. With that, let's jump to our first poll question. So ask you to go ahead and submit, Trudy, if you can put that up. What are your plans for participating in the BEAD program? Are you planning to submit? Are you in the process of submitting? Or does it just look too complex to submit? So if you can, go ahead and enter your answer here. Trudy, we got how many people we got responding so far? Okay, so we got a pretty good number of that were responding. Let's go ahead and close the poll. And it looks like for the most part that only 5% are basically given up. So basic, the rest 68% planning on submitting, 27% in the process of submitting. So hopefully we can help those 5% and get you over the hump with some of the discussion here today and some of the things we're going to be talking about. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Greg, and he's going to take us through the next phase of the discussion.
Good afternoon, good morning, everybody. If you go next slide. So happy birthday to the BEAD program. We're almost 3 years old, if you can believe it. And this has been one heck of a ramp. There's been this pounding in the background for 2.5, 3 years from now, from the time that the federal government first put out the $1.6 billion bipartisan infrastructure deal. 8 months later, the NOFO came out, establishing the $42 billion BEAD program, which is effectively distributing funding out to ISPs in 56 states and territories over the next couple of years. Over the last 3 years, the NTIA and the state offices have been pretty busy. As you can see, by the end of last year, we saw all the initial proposals published by the end of December. And the NTIA has been pretty busy at the first half of this year, approving all the volume ones. So the volume one is around describing what the MAP challenge is all about. And then the volume twos, 23 of the 56 volume twos. And guess what? Just this morning, we had 3 more join. I have seen almost 10 approvals since the beginning of July. So it's really starting to pick up pace. And I'll tell you in a second why it's really, really important that volume 2 gets approved. It does hold us up a little bit. Before we get there, the other significant thing from the date that volume 2 is awarded or approved, the state has a full year and only 1 year to choose those ISPs. So a lot of states are saying, hey, let's get as much done as we can. And that's where we see the MAP challenge, the pre-application. Because once that gets approved, that's it. 365 days, you got to get it done. If it's not done, then, might request a waiver. We'll see what happens. So all of this, we really see a call to action going out to the ISPs. And this call to action is really in terms of starting to watch these MAP challenges, start determining what your target project areas are, and start looking at your business case as you're looking at these project areas and determining what the fiber routes are, the types of equipment that you're going to use to reach out. Let's go to a quick poll question, probably be the best time for all those thinking about BEAD. And I noticed that really over 95% are going for BEAD, and quite frankly, many are already into the process. So lots of challenges that I've heard over the last 6 to 12 months. Inaccuracy in the maps, complexity of the funding application itself, unsure about the whole BEAD requirement and around Build America, Buy America. We have to test compliant as well as making sure that you have enough capital to cover the 25% match. Pick the top 2 that make most amount of sense to you, and I'd love to see your response on this. And I guess the numbers are starting to come in. So yes, maps are definitely still a worry, and the complexity. So we're going to be talking about each of these as we go through, and hopefully we'll be able to solve some of those issues. So I look at if we go to the next slide, I look at what's happening with the BEAD program as as a pretty unique situation. Never have we had a program in funding in the United States that made the statement right up front that every single unserved, underserved location must be assigned, must be built out at the end of this next 4 years once the awards go out. That's a big challenge. In fact, I've been spending a lot of time with the state offices and on different panels, and the question was asked recently, what is the number one thing that keeps you up at night? And it's that I only have 356 days to find viable applications for those unserved and underserved locations. So what's that mean to an ISP? What it means is that the states need the ISP as much as the ISP needs the funds to make the network. So think of this as really a way of sitting at the table with the states, recognizing that their need is your need and vice versa. They want to get everything funded and you want to build a viable network. The 3 key things of how we move forward with that is being rolled out right now by the states. The MAP challenge. Over 40 states have started a MAP challenge at this point. So many of you may have already gone through it. But let's just review what's important for those who haven't gone through it. The MAP challenge, there's really 2 things you need to look at from a ISP standpoint with the MAP challenge. Number 1, defensively protect your serving area. Make sure that there's no unserved or underserved locations that are mistakenly set. And that's going to protect you from new competitors coming in your area as the BEAD money starts flowing. Second, look for growth strategies. The map is notorious. Now that was the number 1 issue, the inaccuracy of the map. Now I see it's changed to the second. 65% you said inaccuracy of the map were issues. This is very important to make sure that you are reaching out for 2 reasons. One is we do want an accurate map, but more importantly, from your business case standpoint, if there are adjacent areas and it's a very viable business case moving forward, that could be an easy way to just expand your fiber out to these areas and build a larger network. So definitely take action. Now the job's not done once you go through that first 30 days of the challenge. Make sure that you watch very closely on a rebuttal. ISPs may see the challenge against you on your locations. You got to make sure that you're willing to answer that challenge through a rebuttal process. And most importantly, stay open with the states of what their intentions are. The next thing is really about the pre-application. Don't think of the pre-application as the registration for the application period. It's much more than that. If you remember back in the RDOF days, what happened was that the FCC had a very light pre-application. It was more of a registration in the sense that, hey, you are registered, so therefore you can be in the auction. What happened with the RDOF auction is, as you know, there's been many defaults. Almost 40% of the award got defaulted. They didn't want to do this with BEAD. So if your state has not opened up a pre-application period, look at what Louisiana is doing. Louisiana's pre-application requirements is 35 pages with about 85 questions, and they cover a number of different key things. As you can imagine, you're going to want to see your audited finances, want to see your letter of credit, your key resume, any technical capabilities within your network, any certifications, the fact that you are abide by federal labor laws. It really is a number of different things. It is some work ahead of time, but the fact is that you get it done and then you don't have to worry about it. And if you're putting out multiple applications, there'll be other reference back to that. So it's a one and done type of thing. And Kristy, can you talk a little bit about the third thing here?
Certainly, thank you, and good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, so the third piece here is the planning before the actual application window is going to open for getting the funding hopefully secured as part of your grant application. And it's the initial business plan. This is our due diligence phase to try to identify what is going to be an eligible, qualified, high-scoring project. So in doing that, you've gone through the mapping challenge, you've identified what areas are going to be eligible priority being those locations not currently getting 25.3 today, underserved at the 100 by 20, and trying to map out from a high level, call it 10,000, 15,000 foot view, to see how are you going to deploy, how are you going to structure your network in order to get service to all of those locations that you're wanting to include in your application. So this is going to be your deployment plan. This is going to be your capital expenditure infrastructure cost. What is your budget? What are you going to need from a grant amount perspective versus our grant match in-kind contribution portion? Per BEAD, the NOFO that came out, the minimum amount of match is 25%, so 75% grant. However, we are seeing several states for their volume 2 on the scoring criteria, they're going to incent those who are able to put more dollars, more funding on the table versus what you're asking for grant. Going back to the state's #1 goal is to get broadband to every single underserved, unserved location in the state. And then part of that too is starting to have those conversations, if you already haven't, in regards to how you're going to meet the BABA requirement, the Buy America, Build America, how you're going to deploy, talking to your vendors, what's that going to look like? And then also structuring, what's that going to look like from a reporting perspective? And add another little piece on the partnership is talking about how you are going to support those anchor institutions, those key locations that are within the area that you're wanting to apply for. And then the last bullet on here is looking at your right of way. What is that going to perchance look like? Is it going to be public right of way where it's going to be a little easier, or are you going to have to traverse and get some private easements to get that network built out? But this is a step that highly recommend. So when that application window does open, you've got a plan, you know what you're going to be looking for as part of your application. So next slide, please.
Excellent. So I'll take the next slide. Thank you so much, Kristy. So the big question is, when does your application period start? So think of a football game, and everything we've talked about getting to this point is the pre-game program. And the game really doesn't start until the application phase starts. So there's really three things you need to look at your state locally of what's going to indicate when the application starts. And the three things are right in front of you. It's the map challenge. So it's not necessarily starting the map challenge. It's not even finishing the map challenge. It's getting the map challenge data to the ENTIA and getting it approved. 8 states have completed and they're queued up with their data at the ENTIA to get approved. Now, I believe what's happening is that perhaps they're waiting for USDA to come out with, the Reconnect 5. There's probably something that's holding it up, and I believe that once they start flowing, they're going to flow. So #1, moving very quickly. Many states have started that. #2, pre-application. 12 states are doing pre-application. Do not let this one catch up on you. This is one that this will bite you. I've seen states. I track this every single day. I've seen states only give you 1 or 2 weeks, and then typically the pre-application is only 2 weeks, so it can move very quickly. And then #3, as I mentioned when we kicked off, I've seen almost 8 approvals just since the beginning of the month. So that's moving very quickly. So all 3 of these things have to happen before the application starts. States that you need to look at immediately, but all 56 are in play. Louisiana, Virginia, Kansas, Colorado, Montana, Delaware, West Virginia, Illinois. You can read the rest, many states. Back to you, Tom.
Back to Kristy.
Yep. So when we look at the BEAD considerations, there is a lot that has to go into your determination of whether or not you do want to apply for BEAD. For those of you who answered the poll that, yep, you're looking at it, you're planning for it, and for those 5% who said, no, we're not, I still recommend that you stay engaged, going back to the mapping piece. And so as we look at those who are proceeding, what are things you need to take into account and look at? So obviously existing network expansions, part of that pre-qualification, the states are wanting to ensure those who are applying for BEAD and potentially be awarded BEAD are, technically, operationally qualified, have been providers. You've been doing the business for how many years back? And so when you're looking at that, take a focus of your existing network and does it make sense? Are there areas that are eligible, you know, just to do an expansion from what you currently have? Or are you going to have to look at doing greenfield, where you're going to have to try to figure out how you are going to connect your existing network to these new greenfields that may be several miles away from where you're currently serving? And then, you know, kind of looking at how the areas are going to be defined. Some states are letting you do just locations. Others are setting pre-qualified, predetermined areas that you'll be able to apply for. Try to figure out how that's going to work and how your network is going to be able to connect. Making sure that you're going to be able to meet the timeline that has been established for BEAD to get the project completed. You need to take a pretty big bite of the apple, but make sure it's a bite that you can maintain and get it chewed before your deadline hits. With our BEAD, we are on a 5-year clock. So with the first volumes being approved, the states have 365 days to get the dollars actually out to you as a provider, and then you'll have your timeline to build out to get that completed. So make sure you're able to tackle something and get it built out during the timeline allowed and required. The third bullet here is very, very important. This is your outreach to communities and your ability to work with town leaders. Partnerships. It's not necessarily the fact that you are developing a brand new legally structured partnership, but you're getting the support from the town leaders, the rural county development boards, business organizations, how you are going to be able to better the lives of the communities you're going to be providing broadband out to. You may be surprised. There may still be some communities out there that still have residual ARPA dollars that they received shortly after COVID that they haven't earmarked it yet. So you may be able to get some of those community dollars to help as part of your in-kind matching contribution for your project. I can't say enough, our experience at Vantage Point is getting those support where you can document that you've had discussions, you've got the commitment from the towns and the communities, how that strengthens your application. And then the last bullet there is, you know, making sure you understand the residential and the business demographics and the locations. Getting support, knowing what's currently there for service. If it's poor, you know, documenting that, how you're able to support, and putting a play in how your network is going to truly benefit those who are going to receive and be hopefully a new customer of yours with the broadband. Next slide, I think this goes to Andre.
Thanks, Kristy. So excellent information on funding, and wanted to, if you have any questions, please enter them in the question chat. We'll cover them at the end. But wanted to shift the focus here to the build and operate phase of the broadband business model. Next slide, Tom. So the question you're probably asking yourself is, what do I need to succeed? And I would say it depends. It depends on how you define success. Some say that success from a broadband platform or broadband BEAD funding involves taking BEAD funding funds and building a network that connects the awarded territory and adopting a build it and they will come mentality. I propose that success entails addressing the needs of the households that you're connecting and your community. As Kristy mentioned, you need your community. It means focusing on their growth and creating the lasting change in that community. That's important. And that's engaging in that community, that's exciting, empowering your community is really virtually for success or vital for your success. During that requires a transformational approach rather than a transactional one. That's proposed by many in the industry. And that transformational approach focuses on helping you grow your business by being an experienced provider. This approach works, and we have helped over 600 providers to move down this journey and succeed. And that involves the transformational approach of taking with BEAD and other funding projects is to help you secure the funding to transform your community with a plan, very important. The next one is help you manage that application and challenge process, and we have partners and to support that. Providing a resilient, flexible, operationally efficient network that is easy to deploy and simple to operate and scales cost effectively as you grow. And focusing on workforce training and job training for the vital resources you need to build and deploy that network and operate it. And then finally, helping you with compliance, and you'll hear more about this later in the webinar, and reporting obligations for the project, making that simple, making that easy as part of your normal operation process. And then finally, bringing in partners like Vantage Point to help you through every step of the journey. So look to design and build the network. Start with your community and a shared vision of success. Next slide, Tom. So as part of the first consideration before we get to the network and the electronics, let's talk about fiber deployment, because that's probably one of the most significant capital expenses you're going to have, is the construction and the environmental regulations around fiber deployment. What are the considerations for these underserved and unserved territories? First, there's the reason why these areas are underserved and unserved in the first place. Many is because it's cost prohibitive and not economically feasible. And that's really what this program helps, this hurdle, and moving that target forward and alleviating this initial investment need. We get questions about PON architectures, and I'll talk about those considerations here for rural applications. Whether, for example, you have a centralized approach to your PON network with power splitters, or you configure a more distributed approach. And the question to that is, it depends. There are two approaches for deploying fiber to the home PON technology in rural areas. The tap splitters, you can deploy unbalanced approaches, but those are typically deployed in situations where you have a large concentration of population. And there's the distributor, what I would call cascade approach, that's typically used for rural applications, where subscribers are grouped together along rural roads and separated by long distances. So you should consider using this approach and talking to that with your designers or engineers. Distributed tap really comprises of optical splitters that diverts a portion of that light, typically like 10% towards that area. And then it provides optical splitters that you can split the light and divert it and drop along the way of that route. The advantage of this is it reduces the amount of fiber cabling needed. So it also reduces your overhead and makes faster to deployment. One of the challenges here is making sure your project is deployed on time. And it lowers training costs, because many of the technicians that are out there are familiar with this type of deployment that occur in the 90s and early 2000s that are similar to hybrid fiber coax deployments. And then finally, we want to extend all this, accelerates your time to market and your project completion date. And then next, consider another question we get is it better to use taps or use remote OLTs? And what I mean by that is sometimes these networks, you have to extend and deploy remote optical line terminals, and this requires more fiber to be available along the route. So that's something you need to consider, and also enclosures, as well as how you're going to power that and the permitting process along the way. So OLTs may not be able to reach all the subscribers or any further than 60 kilometers typically, but what you want to consider the additional costs and how you plan your network. You may want to move your OLT to your optical line terminal to a location or node so that you can reach as many subscribers as possible and make that feasible. And then lastly, consider network redundancy at this stage, especially if you're going into a greenfield situation here, which most are. Downtime is detrimental to businesses and individuals, and you need to design your ODN, your fiber network, that is critical to this and be diversely routed fiber for these critical applications. This also allows you to deploy technologies like geo-redundant PON, rings, and so forth that you can use to provide high availability and additional value-added services for crucial applications. And then finally, what I'll say about the considerations for the area deployment is engage your town planning, real estate developers, realtors, local. I think Kristy, you said this earlier. Businesses. You want to make sure you identify where new development is going to occur or the opportunity to occur, because that gives you the best chance to be successful. Kristy, I wanted to talk about what they should include in the application. Can you talk a little bit about that as we move?
Yep, so you had a great segue then to actually the first bullet under there is, as we're building our application, what do we want to make sure we're including? And so it is going to be that high level design that's going to identify where it makes sense to build your fiber in a way that you're doing it efficiently. I mean, we're working with a tight budget, and the requirement that you have to put some of your own funding in there is making sure that you're hitting that. We're not at this level as part of the application going out and doing full staking and doing all of the specific engineering layouts. It's more, like I said, that 10,000, 15,000 foot. You do work with maps, you outline the routes, how you're going to provide the service. Is it going to be full fiber? Are you going to be committing in your application to be able to do the 100 by 100 symmetrical speed? What's that going to require for your electronic piece? But one thing that sometimes gets missed and wanted to highlight is making sure you're also taking a look at what level of environmental oversight, environmental clearance you are going to be required to do before you'll be able to actually start construction. So a high level initial Peru of what that environmental is going to look like. It's not going through the full detailed report, but at least engaging someone who has a good understanding of what it's going to potentially be. So you build that in to your application so you know what that impact is going to be upon being awarded funding. And then any geographic impact you're going to have. Are you going to be going on any forest lands, any tribal lands, any other lands that's going to require you to obtain approval to construct on those lands? Make sure you go through and get all of that done. Already kind of had mentioned the right-of-way analysis. Are you going to be able to do private, public? Are you going to need easements? What is the permitting process going to be? And as part of your conversations with, city leaders, town leaders, is there the ability that if there's a pretty stringent permitting process that you would be able to get an ease of obtaining those permitting and get that certification commitment from the city, the community, whoever it may be, and build that into your application? And then definitely we do need to have a timeline. You have to identify in your application how you are going to be constructing it over the calendar year throughout the duration. If you're planning a full 4-year build to get the broadband out there, what are you going to be doing throughout each quarter of year 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4, doing that for each year and having that set. We understand, and I think the states that we've worked with understand that a lot of things are going to hinge on that timeline, environmental clearance, etc. But making sure that you have a plan scoped out and you include that. In-kind contributions, the BEAD NOFA does allow for this. So in lieu of financial matching contribution, what is your state going to allow you to do to support an in-kind contribution? Are you going to be able to utilize internal labor? So you're going to potentially be able to reduce your contract pricing that you're going to get because you've got qualified, skilled staff internally that's going to be able to do that. And so you as an applicant would be donating their time, but using it as in-kind contribution. That's just one form. There are several things that can be addressed at that piece. And then routine compliance with state and federal regulations requirements. That was one of the lower polling questions that people are concerned about. We are going to see reporting, and I'll cover that here at a later slide, but just having a sense of what that's going to look like and that you're going to certify as part of your application that, yes, we will be compliant. We have been compliant in the past. Next slide.
Yeah, thanks, Kristy. Yeah, thank you for that. And as you said, making sure you're in lockstep with the state and your town and so forth, making sure that you're lockstep with them on what's going on is vitally important. So next we're going to look at the key network design considerations. And as you can see here, these are basic design areas and principles. These should be familiar for you. They're the same for all networks. Really, the key here is it always looks to the network design from a perspective of the subscriber, the services, and the network, and how that impacts the total cost of ownership. So what I wanted to do here is not talk about these because they're similar, but talk more about, let's look at BEAD specific funding specifications and considerations. So if we go to the next slide, from a network perspective and infrastructure, the biggest difference here is that to other networks is that when you build for BEAD, that you have, if you, one that is versus one that is privately funded, since BEAD projects are federally funded, projects for BEAD for the broadband infrastructure need to comply with the Build America, Buy America Act. And this is just due to the fact that it's federally funded. And typically what's included here and what needs to be part of the Build America is fiber optics, optical fiber, optical cable, enclosures, and the electronics that go with it are included as part of this act because it's federally funded. And what happened is the industry got together because there's a number of issues that would hold back, there's not enough supply to make these networks feasible. There's a number of different reasons for that. And the industry got together with the Department of Commerce and the NTIA and identified what waivers are required from a Buy America for requirement. And they've asked, these waivers will last for 5 years, starting from February 22nd of this year to February 22nd of 2029. And they've asked the manufacturers of the electronics and the equipment and the enclosures and the fiber to self-certify. And these informations will be posted on the NTIA site. One requirement from a reporting perspective that's available, required right now, is that items that you source from foreign sources need to be reported. And what I'll say here is more information will come from your state. So stay close to them. States may have specific requirements around reporting in the coming time. So keep tabs of that. Next slide. What are other BEAD considerations? We talked about rural territory deployment, and we spoke about that and the importance of network design and the importance of connecting with the community and the proper planning up front that could reduce, the most important thing, the cost of the project and the speed of deployment. And that's where we're getting to accelerate the time to market. What are the factors that you should consider in accelerating the time to market from a network perspective? The first is you need to a deployment system that is fast in integrating to the OSS and BSS systems. It should have open SDN interfaces that you can quickly integrate, and it may have pre-integration already in place with existing partners that provide OSS and BSS systems. That's number one. Number two, you should consider looking at a consolidated network that's a solution that consolidates network functions like subscriber management and like aggregation. And this allows you to move these functions closer to the subscriber, but the benefit here is eliminates the needs for other system and speeds up your deployment and allows you to simplify your operations and training. And then the third thing from an acceleration perspective is the ability to look for systems that allow you to automate and configure and turn up the system automatically. So PON system solutions that have common operational models, that have automated systems to turn up the system, that you're not always going to find that. So those are things that actually speed up your deployment and accelerate your time to market. Next, if you look at service availability and resiliency, you want, broadband is an essential service, and subscribers are going to use it, want to use it for work from home, for learning and other applications, and you want your territories to be economically viable. And in order to that, you want to look for solutions that are modular and have in-service upgrade capabilities. They support resiliency like rings and lags, MPLS, and geo-redundant PLAN that are used for critical applications. You want to have that from the start. And then from an operational efficiency standpoint, you want capabilities that are going to boost your productivity. This is important for multi-year projects, right? Because although you have upfront costs, the operations cost will cause issues with your return on investment and profitability. So you may want to use your resources, for example, as you build this project, it's not going to be a one-time build. You want to use your resources to build as much as possible and complete that growth. You don't want to tie up your resources on supporting and maintaining the network. So you want to look for systems that automate provisioning capabilities that allow the subscriber to automate and provision their own service. You want to look for capabilities that support automatic IP address management, for example, that allow you to be more operationally efficient and eliminate stranded IP addresses or eliminate the need for using multinetting and so forth. And then finally, you want to look for systems that provide, and we'll see that in a second, diagnostic and troubleshooting tools to identify potential issues and provide root cause analysis to allow you to reduce the time to repair for issues, and also to eliminate or reduce truck rolls. Imagine what a truck roll will cost when your subscribers are, could be as far as 30 miles away or 40 miles away or even further. So in a rural environment, truck rolls are really expensive, and they become a large operational hurdle to supporting your network. And then finally, you want to look for systems that are sustainable and provide green broadband to lower the cost of energy and power that are used along the network. Next slide, Tom. So what is a BEAD compliant network? What I wanted to show you is that it's a simple, as you can see here, flexible and resilient end-to-end network that's a foundation for your business success. A BEAD project compliant network should consider the design from the internet gateway all the way to the subscriber gateway. It should consist of aggregation, access, and premises domain solutions, and deliver aggregation for all service traffic in the aggregation domain, and the ability to scale your network cost effectively as you grow, and provide traffic segmentation and the ability to optimize the performance of that network. And then in the access domain, and then these components here in the aggregation domain are BEAD compliant, but they're Buy America waived, and that's part of that guidance that was provided by the NTIA and Department of Commerce. In the access domain, you're looking for systems that incorporate obviously optical line terminals and optical network terminals, and they consider these varying deployment scenarios, right? Not every scenario is going to be the same, so you want to put in solutions that allow you to connect subscribers and deliver services wherever those subscribers are in the network, from remote locations to highly dense locations to everywhere in between. You want to have that flexibility as you deploy your network to avoid delay. And then lastly, these components here are what I would call BEAD compliant, and they need to be compliant with the Buy America compliant. And as I said earlier, they will be posted as to what those components are in the NTIA website by the vendor community. So your supplier will provide a list, and Calix will provide you a list of what is BEAD compliant from an end-to-end perspective. And then finally, from a subscriber network perspective, we offer a set of single system and multifunctional units that combine ONT, residential gateway, and Wi-Fi function, and they're also simple to deploy and operate. Next, what I wanted to do is take a look at the next slide at just give you a sense of the systems at a high level. First, from an access system, you want to consider the deployment scenarios, as I said before, for our intelligent access edge portfolio that enable providers to deliver services across the subscriber-facing network, from the remote locations to high-density locations and everywhere in between. And next, I wanted to share the next slide, our aggregation service manager, which is a portfolio of systems that performs layer 3 capacity and service aggregation. And it's deployed in a variety of IO counts with 100 gig aggregation, and it delivers traffic to the ISP and content providers to aggregate. It provides aggregation and optical performance for your network and services, and reduces your total cost of ownership. And then finally, the next slide is an unlimited subscriber portfolio that delivers broadband network flexibility and performance that needed for service providers and their services on their premise. We offer on the left single in-premise solutions with a combined ONT and Wi-Fi router functions, all in one system. And then we offer standalone ONT that provide a separate demarcation for you. And then regardless of which way you go, you want to choose, you have options to choose. Next, what I wanted to do is Tom's gonna take a closer look at the premises solution and their advantages.
Thanks, Andre. I'm actually going to skip ahead. I think you covered those solutions there, but I want to pick up on a point that we talked about earlier about just the whole that it doesn't stop from a network perspective. It doesn't stop at the access and the aggregation. Another important consideration when you're deploying these end-to-end networks is really how are you going to support and manage that experience that you're delivering. So when you're selecting a solution for the BEAD build out, make sure that you have the tools, you have the visibility, processes in place to help you manage those networks and services and subscribers. And with BEAD or with any other network that you're deploying, you're not only going to want to deliver an exceptional service, but you're also going to want to reduce this overall TCO of managing and delivering those services. So, take this as an opportunity to modernize your existing customer support and broadband operations processes. Really help these groups with visibility and intelligence that can help reduce expenses, truck rolls, get the take rates that you're looking for from a BEAD perspective, and really stand out within the community. And you also want to make sure that solution is tightly integrated with out-of-box capabilities. It's going to help you on day zero when you go into network. Another thing I want to point out is a consideration that the Calix solution has, and that's the integrated performance testing capabilities. That's comprised of a test controller, integrated testing clients, and also test server capabilities that conform to FCC broadband testing. And Greg's going to cover that in a little bit as far as this is something that you really need to watch for as you go through the deployment stage and also start from a validation. The other thing I want to point out too is that you should take into consideration the resources that you need to help with the planning and the design and the build out of the network. You want to leverage partners such as Calix and Vantage Point, help you accelerate the BEAD deployment. It can help you in a lot of different ways. It can speed your time to market, help you keep track on the project, reduce risks, and meet those project milestones. And it's also going to be easy help on your operations and your existing subscribers as well. So, but I want to emphasize when it comes to whether the design, the build out, the program management, tournament tests are all covered under funding, that's going to depend on the state. And it's going to vary based on whether they fund the professional services or not as part of the overall BEAD project. And there are certain professional services, construction, installation services that may be eligible, but it's going to depend on the particular state's level of funding on whether or not they include these costs in their award. So the key thing here is to stay in close contact with your state as you explore this whole topic. And the BEAD grant, as Greg pointed out, also called the NOFO, details these eligible uses of BEAD funding, including the personnel costs for things like staff and consultants that are providing these services that are directly connected to the implementation of the BEAD program. And again, too, other things that could be included would be like training for broadband-related deployments. But again, need the clarification at the state level really to do this. I'm going to hand it over to Kristy here to have her top off on some of the reporting and compliance, and also have Greg share some thoughts too on the testing.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Just real quick, with BEAD, the states themselves were the main recipient of the BEAD funding. So ultimately, the states are going to be required to report to NTIA that they had processes and procedures in place to make sure that they were being good stewards of those federal dollars. So as part of the reporting requirements that we are going to see service providers have to do to the state is you're committing to build broadband out to a set number of addresses, locations, and you're going to be identifying businesses, residential, anchor institutions, etc. So those two pieces are going to be required as part of your reporting. If you're committing that you think you're going to get a set percentage of those locations actually taking and subscribing to service, being a reporting of how that aggregate percentage has been hopefully increasing. Then what you are committing to deliver for speeds, you're going to have to show what your actual peak actual speeds are, your off-peak speeds, what your advertised speeds are, the retail rates. If you remember, we have the underlying Affordable Connectivity Program participation. That's gone. We are seeing states that are also now trying to push in their own low-cost offering. So make sure you're in tune of what that may be and that you're going to be able to meet what that requirement is. The SF 425 form, if you've ever received funding from the federal government, this is a form that you may have already seen. It's going to be required as each of your filing. We haven't hit a lot on this, but the whole prevailing wage, strong labor standards, so anything that's over $5 million that you're getting in federal funding is going to require you to do certifications on your workforce. Are you doing Davis-Bacon? Are you paying prevailing wage? How does that look, and how you're going to be certifying that you are compliant? And then any other reporting requirements that your state may implement. Several states have had broadband programs in the past, and so there's going to be some carryover from what they required on their prior programs to BEAD. So high level, quick overview on that piece for you.
Hey, so I'll take it from here. So thank you so much, Kristy. Hey, we got a question that came up and I want to just answer it really quickly. So the question was, can Calix assist on the cybersecurity plan? Here's how I best answer it, is there's two components. If you look at the cybersecurity plan, it's actually your entire plan for your operation. The part that's the Calix hardware, the Calix software, the privacy with that software, we can definitely help you out. What we're recommending to most ISPs are reach out to an expert to help build the plan, Vantage Point or others, and then part of that we will fill in the blanks definitely around our equipment. So I think that's the best way to handle that. Back to what Kristy was just talking about, I'm going to talk, I'm going to talk a little bit about performance testing. I'm only going to spend about 2 or 3 minutes on it, but it really is a key thing. We'll probably swoop back and have a much bigger webinar just specifically on this. So NTIA picked the FCC, USAC, FCC performance testing because number one is there, it's well documented. It was documented back in 2018. Testing started in 2000. Over 500 or 600 service providers are doing it today. So I would say reasonably it's a pretty mature solution. For many of you who have never gotten into this type of testing, you'll find a lot of help there. You'll find the help from Calix, from Vantage Point and others, and there's some pretty mature hardware and software out there to help drive it forward. But I did want to take just a few minutes to go over that. If we can go to the next slide. If you're scratching your head and say, where's it in the NOFO? Well, here it is, page 64. Why don't we go to the next slide? So here's how it works at a really high level. 3 components. One component in the subscriber home, one component back in your network. It's all level 3 or layer 3 type of testing. So it would typically sit at the IXP where you're connecting to the internet. And then there's a cloud instance for the test controller. As you can see, the primary piece of hardware you're dealing with is a test client. So it's going to be pretty important that you build that into your design very quickly and recognize the fact that the sooner you get the hardware in, the better. Even though your testing doesn't start until year 2, year 3, you want that hardware there. Because the last thing you want to do is that you get a list of subscribers that need to do the testing, and then you have to call them up, you have to ship them a piece of hardware, you got to blah, blah, blah. Get the hardware there, get it built in and designed. The test server, you can go with your own test server, or there's a lot of different schemes that you can use third-party type of test servers. So we can definitely get into that detail if you want to reach out to us. Next slide, and my last slide on performance testing. I hand it back to you, Tom. Let's just briefly go through the 5 steps. This is learned after doing 4-5 years of this type of testing. And these are all the key things I'm saying. From this point on, time equals 0 moving forward for the BEAD program. Design today, the main thing you want to work out is to get the hardware into the subscriber that's going to be the test client, so you don't have to worry about it later. Most gateway already have the horsepower in those gateways to actually do the testing, but make sure that you put one in there that not only has the horsepower, but you have the ability to remotely turn it on. Number two, prepare. Prepare is, Kristy was just talking about that. You are gonna have to report on every single active location that you reach. You send that to USAC, an extension of the FCC. USAC will say, thank you, test these 10%. Typically it's 10% based on the rules, and you have to take that 10%, reach back out to that customer and turn it on. Pre-test. Don't wait until the day that you're required to testing. In fact, a lot of our customers who started to do the earlier testing started a year before the pre-test with USAC, and then which is a year before the actual testing. So get this under your belt, get this as a muscle memory. Just it's a pain at first. Once it's part of your program,
Did we lose Greg?
I lost his audio, so.
Yeah. I think you-
Okay, all right. So again, as Greg was saying, get this whole process in as part of your muscle memory. This is the same process being used for existing funding programs, and as he had pointed out, this is going to be the same process being used for validation purposes, for BEAD purposes as well. So if you want information on basically how to do this, again, we can set up a consult with you to go over in a little more detail. I wanted to give Kristy a couple minutes here just to talk about some of the services Vantage Point provides as well from a BEAD perspective.
Thank you, Tom. Yes, so Vantage Point, if you've not heard of us, we are headquartered in Mitchell, South Dakota. That's where I'm at today, presenting to you from. We are engineering consulting. We are able to help you from start to future solutions all under one roof. Feasibility, funding, that's my world. Live and breathe it every day, love it. Network design, engineering. We also help with outside plant, project management, network implementation, cybersecurity as a component of BEAD that you will have to have, regulatory compliance on the reporting side, operations strategy, and so much more. As part of that business plan due diligence, actually going through and applying for funding, Vantage Point is here to help as needed. And then the next slide just kind of shows what our current clientele is based off. We serve anyone who's really in the broadband world. ILEC, CLECs, electric cooperatives, local state governments. We work with tribal nations companies, cable video operators, and we've got great relationships with our contractors and vendors with who we are speaking with today as Calix. So contact information is going to be included in the slide. So if you have questions or want to reach out directly to me to get some more information, please do. I would welcome the conversation. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. And so I just also wanted to highlight a couple things that you may be interested as well too. Kristy talked about as far as what Vantage Point can do. We also want to also make available to you BEAD funding consults, help you with identifying your strategy, guiding you through, and helping to make to simplify this whole application process. And we've got access to tools that you can have to help streamline this overall journey that you're taking. The other one I want to emphasize too is the BEAD Network Consult. Navigating through the things that need to be put into the access network and aggregation network. It can be challenging, but just to make sure that you're adhering to the BEAD requirements. And also basically to set up a network from a best practice perspective, get preliminary budgeting information and so forth as you submit your plan. Calix can help you if you want. There's an option here that you can set up a free complimentary BEAD network consult that can help you take a look at some of the questions and concerns and challenges that you have with establishing a firm plan for overall network, but also end-to-end perspective, management, premises, architectures, and so forth. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and open up the final questions here, final question, to see what you'd like more information on. So if you want to, put in a request for a funding consult, we'll follow up with you on talking with you about some specifics with your situation on where you stand with your overall BEAD application journey. Also talked about the BEAD Network Design Consult. I highly recommend that as you're looking to establish some of your high-level plans, as well as once you have gone down the path, is to establish what does that detailed design look like as well too. And then also, if you want to set something up with Vantage Point, from an end-to-end perspective, and all the things that Kristy had shared with you, that we can go ahead and submit that, and we can make sure that we follow up with you, or that Vantage Point follows up with you on that. And then also, we've got a white paper available that really goes over the funding programs. And so if you want, go ahead and add that overall to your list, and we'll make sure that we follow up with you and share some of this information. So with that, we're at the top of the hour. Really appreciate you staying with us. We've got a couple questions in here. We'll make sure we get back with the folks that asked those and follow up. But again, I want to say thank you to Andre, to Kristy, to Greg for a great job just stepping us through some of the considerations, some of the key points to think about as you're going through this overall BEAD journey. So with that, I'll hand it back to Trudy. Really appreciate your time this afternoon.
Yeah, so thank you very much for joining, and I just wanted to remind everybody that you will be receiving an email from us with the recorded webinar, and any questions that you have, please feel free to follow up. And as we're collecting here the responses for the specific follow-ups, you'll be hearing from us in the next several days. I want to thank you very much for joining, and I hope that today was meaningful time spent, and that you have a great rest of your day. Thank you.